Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first in a while online meeting. My name is Anthony. I'm the chair of the Audio Engineering Society here in Toronto. Visit our website, torontoaes.org. It's been a while, like pre-COVID, I guess, since we did a live stream and we got really good at it. And this month is an opportunity to share with you an international guest. So we're lucky to be able to do this. The Toronto AES, we unite audio engineers socially. Within our allied arts, we collate, collect, and disseminate scientific knowledge that furthers all fields of audio engineering. And we aim to empower people of all ages through participation in a healthy, safety, open environment. So we're here to learn about audio through engineering, mentorship, presentations, networking. Uh, the best way to get a hold of us is through our website, torontoaes.org or torontoaes.org if you're from Toronto. Um, there are meeting events, masters of audio, member profiles, and of course links to our member showcase where we put all of our information, our mail outs, everything ready to go for that. We do 10 events a year on average. So our recent events, hearing fatigue and gadgets and gizmos and noise and the Twilight Zone and stuff. This slide is a little bit dated, but we've been doing 10 meetings a year, normally in person, but tonight is a very special night for us. We want to thank our sponsors. Some of them are local Canadian suppliers and reputable distributors of equipment and audio equipment within our community. avshop.ca, Gare Audio, Sono Technique, Q5X, YSL Pro, Electrosonics Canada, BRTB, Global USS, Adamson, Lawo, and avshop.ca is on there twice for some strange reason. So it must be that this slide is out of date. Give the gift of membership. So for the audio engineer that absolutely has everything, you can join them. You can join yearly. It is tax deductible. It is tax season, so please, remember to claim your membership as a professional services that you do. Go to aes.org/join and become a member today or tomorrow or the day after, whenever you're watching this. If you go to our YouTube channel, thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel. Like I said, during the COVID, the pandemic, the Great Reaction, we did many events, and we try to record all of our events and publish our events so we can come back to it in the future and watch. Our executive has grown. I apologize, there's a couple of names missing here. Like I said, my name is Anthony. I'm the chair. Christopher Sampson, our vice chair, our past chair Ross, and our treasurer Jeff, along with Mariana, Brian, Warren Beck, James, Danmore Burkett, and of course today we have Angeli. Angeli, are you there? Have you got your microphone on? Are we able to?
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello, Angeli. Well, thank you for joining the Audio Engineering Society of Toronto and becoming part of our executive. I like to say that we're an improv society, an audio improv society, and you came to us with this beautiful topic, and I'm going to pass the floor over to you so you can maybe give a little spiel about what we're presenting tonight.
Hi, everyone. So glad you could join us. And I'm really, really happy to have a close friend of mine, great colleague. His name is Mark L. Cowden. He lives in Northern Ireland. And what we chose to do for tonight's presentation was to bring a very wondrous and oddly relevant topic to audio engineering. And I, of course, will let Mark tell you all about that. And we pre-recorded his presentation so that belt and suspenders, we'd make sure that we had everything to provide to you today. And so what will take place is I will go ahead and introduce Mark to you, then we will start the live presentation. Then you've received a Zoom link to hop on to immediately following the presentation to join a live question and answer with Mark chiming in from Northern Ireland. So let me tell you a little bit about Mark. Um, I learned about Mark from the BBC watching a series of United Kingdom's Greatest Haunts. Mark has been studying the supernatural in the UK, in Ireland, and elsewhere for over 20 years. He has been featured on projects for the BBC, Discovery Networks UK, UK TV, Italy One, and a whole bunch of other channels. He is the author of Spirit Voices, the first live conversation between worlds. It's a book which documents Mark's encounters with the supernatural phenomena in the UK and in Ireland. So he's going to talk with us about these experiences tonight. Out of his passion and his experience, he investigates and reports on anomalous phenomena that take place around the globe. He is an avid traveler. He founded Anomalous Planet, which is an adventure hub and media platform that investigates anomalous phenomena worldwide. So, Anthony, I'm going to pass this back to you, and whenever we're ready to get started for Mark's presentation, we can get started. Hi, Mark. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here all the way from Ireland. Go ahead and let us know. What are you going to talk with us about today?
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's exciting to be here. It's intimidating to be here. I typically do a lot of interviews on radio and TV shows to an audience of people sitting on their sofas who watch these paranormal type shows. So to be surrounded by professional audio people is a bit it's more scary than being in a dungeon of a castle in Ireland, to be honest with you, because I can guarantee that all of you are a lot smarter and a lot more experienced at this than I am. But I have the benefit of having some experience with audio recording in a very unique genre that a lot of people don't hear about or experience. So I suppose I'll just go in and tell the story and the experiences I've had with that, and go into some of the equipment and technology and processing that we used in doing that. And we'll see where that goes. If anybody, I'll not get too much into the woo-woo. I'll keep it on the straight and narrow, and I'll impress everybody by my Rush T-shirt. So now that I've got your attention with the best band on the planet. So my name is Mark L. Cowden, and I moved to Ireland from Seattle in the turn of the century. And in about 2003, I applied for a job as a cameraman for a local TV station in Belfast, and went in for the interview, and I ended up getting the job. And the TV studio was in an old Victorian linen mill. Now, the thing about Ireland is they don't demolish buildings and build shopping malls. So they keep these buildings standing. You can go deposit money in a bank, and you could be in a building that was 400 or 500 years old. This studio was no different. Yes, it was a television studio, but it was encased by a Victorian linen mill with hundreds of years of history. And so I got this job and started filming, and I wasn't really an audio technician. I knew as much as I needed to know to be a self-shooting camera person. So I knew a little bit about audio, knew a little bit about video. Wasn't an expert by any means, but kind of knew what I needed to know and learned what I didn't know along the way. And we would go out into the community, and we would film these community projects and bring the footage back, put it onto the computers and edit it and put it out for TX for broadcast. Now, this was 2003, 2004. And back then we used tape. There was none of the memory card stuff or any of that stuff. So you recorded on these Canon XL2 cameras, which had a mini DV and HDV tapes, magnetic tape. And they stored about an hour of footage, and you would bring this back, and the ingestion process of putting the footage onto the computer was in real time because you were running on tape. And we found after a while that it was more time efficient to do the ingestion overnight and then come back the next day to record the footage. And so we would do that. We would hook the camera up to a firewire and hook the firewire up to the computer. and set the time codes. And if you had an hour of footage, it took an hour to put it onto the computer. And last thing at night before we would leave, we would set the cameras up for the ingestion process and start ingesting the tapes, and we would leave and come in the next morning. Footage would be on the computer ready to edit. It was a more time efficient way to do this. So after a couple of years, strange things started happening with the camera that I was using in particular, where I would come in the morning and the footage on the computer would be contaminated. It would be all muddled up, jumbled up, weird speeds, unusable. But it would never happen during the day. It would only happen on this overnight process. So one time in particular, I just determined that the footage was unusable and deleted it off the computer, reset the perimeters, ingested the footage again, and it worked perfectly, and went about with my edit. Well, that night, I brought that day's footage in, set it up for the ingestion process, left, came back the next day. The footage was garbage. It was unusable. And this happened for about 3 days in a row. And on the third day, I went in, same thing. And I was going to delete the footage off the computer, but I had noticed that not only was the footage contaminated, but the computer had rewound the camera and recorded over the original tape. So I had no footage to replace this with. I had no choice but to try to fix the footage that was on the computer or just lose the project. And that's when the weirdness started. As I put the headphones on and I was going through this footage to try to figure out how much the computer had slowed it down by, how much I needed to speed it up to make it sound sort of normal, there was a couple of areas where something caught my ear, and it appeared to be a voice calling my name. And so I rewound it, played it again. Sure enough, it was, you heard the normal that you'd hear with footage that's messed up, but then you heard Mark, Mark, Mark. So put the headphones off, went over and got one of the other guys, and then said, "Here, listen to this and tell me what you hear." He puts it on, he listens to it, he looks at me, he's like, "It says your name." And then he says, "But it says run and hide." So I put the headphones back on, I was listening to it, and it says, "Mark, run, Mark, hide." So we had an intern with no audio experience, and we just wanted a third opinion. And her name is Michelle. And I said, "Michelle, have a listen to this." And she was your typical Irish Catholic background, superstitious. And I think she got about 2 seconds into it before the headphones were thrown off and she was out of the room. And so that was my first experience of anything anomalous captured onto audiovisual equipment. And plus there was the rumors of this mill being haunted, and as well as every old building in Ireland is. It's probably considered the most haunted place on earth. You can't go anywhere without ghost stories. And the two guys that managed this television station, they had accommodation that they stayed in at night. They lived in a town called Londonderry, which was a couple of hours away. So during the week, they would live on site and they would go home at the weekend. And these were also two typical Catholic background, superstitious guys. And I remember coming in one morning and we had a cargo elevator that came down from their premises to the studio. And you could hear this cargo elevator just squeaking and rattling. And I knew one of the managers was coming down. So I waited at the door to say hello to him. And the door opens and he's sitting there with a cigarette going like this. He's like, "This place is weird." He's like, "There's always strange things happening." He's like, "Last night I was coming out of my room and there was a man walking across the hallway and he just disappeared." Well, needless to say, shortly after that, these two guys left. It was too much for them to handle. And this is after I worked there for a couple of years and kind of moved up the ranks. I was manager at this point in time. So the funders said to me, "Well, why don't you just run the place for a while and see how that goes and do it without these guys?" So that was fine. So I decided that I would live in the premises. This was the month of July. Anybody that knows Irish history, July in Belfast is a very political month. And during that time, there was a few riots in town, so it was easier for me to spend a few days living on the premises than it was to be traveling by public transport. It was safer. So I decided to do that. And sure enough, everything they said was true. Doors would slam, noises would be made. You just sometimes you would hear sounds that just sounded like it was still an operating linen mill, like machinery and all this sort of stuff. So that kind of got me interested. I mean, I wasn't one of these people that watched all the ghost shows and all that stuff. But whenever you have these personal experiences and you see these things from a level head, it kind of gets you interested. So I decided to look into it, to research and see if there'd been any other occurrences where people had recorded this kind of stuff on audiovisual equipment. And that's when, to my surprise, not only was there a long history of this, but it wasn't from lunatics. It was from people household names. Thomas Edison. Uh, Thomas Edison was so interested in it that he started drawing up plans for a device he called a spirit phone, and he was completely interested in the fact that he believed that the human personality survived on past the death experience, and that's not attached to any type of religion or spiritualist or anything like that. He believed in an energy is indestructible, and that the power and energy of a human being and our personality must carry on past the physical body. And if this is the case, then with all his knowledge of technology and recording devices, it should be possible to record this with the participation of the personality, of course. And so nobody really knows how far he got on this spirit phone, but we do know that he was interested in it and he was drawing up plans for it. So another person I found was a man. I've got some notes here because it's late at night and I'm old. There's a man, a Swedish painter, Frederick Jurgensen, and I think it was early 1900s that he was sort of in operation on this planet. And he was an enthusiast in recording bird song, the sounds of a swallow he was trying to record. And he started noticing on his, much like I noticed on my equipment, he started noticing on the playback of his equipment that he was getting voices when all he was recording was out in the woods, the sounds of leaves rattling and these birds singing. And he heard his father's voice. And then as time went on, he heard his mother's voice on these birdsong recordings. And then finally, to top it off, his late wife actually left him a whole sentence, a whole message. And he took these recordings to a man, a psychologist, the person that's, if there's anybody that's going to call us all lunatics, it's going to be this guy. But the psychologist listened to these recordings. His name was Konstantin Rodiv. He worked in a Swedish university, and he was so convinced and hooked on these recordings that he developed a laboratory and made over 100,000 recordings which contained anomalous voices. So the history was clear. I wasn't the first person this has happened to. There's a long history of it from the very beginning of audio recording. This anomalous stuff was happening, and it was happening to well-educated experts, names that we all know. So that kind of got me further interested in it. So I wanted to test the technology and to test microphones, test computers, test processing to see if I could make these things come in clearer or prove that it was just some kind of contamination. And the only way I could think of doing this was to practice in apparent haunted locations. So I hooked up with a local paranormal group. And once you start researching paranormal groups, you find the good, the bad, the ugly. 99.99% lunatic, 0.01% as close to scientific as you can get. And I found the 0.01% that was as close to scientific as you could get. I didn't want to be involved with weird things like Ouija boards or any of that stuff. I wanted to be with some level-headed people who went to some cool locations and were interested in me setting up audio gear to try to capture this anomalous stuff. So that's what we did. And these guys had a base at a haunted castle. in Northern Ireland. So it was the perfect location. We went there, I think, every Tuesday and Thursday night, and we set up equipment and we just monitored the place and recorded things. And I started developing methods and researching microphones, and I found that, like, as a musician and a tech person, you want to buy the Sennheiser. You want to get the most expensive mics that you can get. But of course, budget's always a thing to consider. And with all the various microphones I found, there was one called the Behringer C1 condenser mic. Cheap, about $30-$40 you could buy one, which was very appealing to me. But the quality was great. I mean, it was a great vocal mic, great for picking up musical instruments. And the frequency response to that was 50 hertz to it was 40 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So it was almost the whole human hearing frequency range. I mean, even like a Shure SM58, it only goes to maybe 15,000 hertz, and that's an expensive, good quality mic. And these cheap Behringer mics, they were covering 40 hertz to 20,000 hertz, and as everybody knows, the human ear is capable of hearing 20 to 20,000 hertz. But that's like saying your car, an automobile, is capable of getting 80 miles to the gallon. Oh yeah, it might be capable, but your car's not going to get that. The same with human ears. A human's built to hear 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, but none of us can really hear in that range. And especially those of us who stand in front of loud amplifiers and kick drums can hear even less. The sweet spot is, what was it? 2,000 to 5,000 hertz is kind of the sweet spot for a normal human. That's where we hear best. But I was kind of reckoning that these anomalous voices are probably typically just outside of what we can normally hear, which is why we don't hear them. And there was something about the equipment that on the playback, you could hear them. And it sounds strange until you think of the Northern Lights. You guys in Canada, like if you're in Finland or Norway or something, seeing them with your own eyes is a normal thing. But in Ireland here and maybe down around Toronto and that, the aurora is there. I mean, I get the pings on my app that it's happening, but when I look in the sky, I can't see it. But if I snap a picture, I look at the picture, they're there. There's something with the magnetic energy that you can't see it with your eyes, but you can see it on the playback of the technology. Well, that works the same way with the audio. The speech seems to just be outside of the human hearing range, but on the playback, it's clear as day. And so I spent about a year with these guys, this paranormal group, and the BBC come knocking on the door and wanted to do a television show of Ireland's most haunted locations, and wanted this paranormal group to be involved. And they thought it would be cool if and maybe in the pilot episode, I set up a few microphones and just showed them what I was trying to do. Well, I was never intended to be like a full-blown cast member of this TV show. I was supposed to be a contributor at most for a few seconds at the end of the pilot episode. And the BBC wanted to do a factual show. So anybody that's watched these paranormal shows on the Travel Channel or any of these other channels, if you look at the tagline, they're called entertainment, which means, we can slam a door in the background or we can make whatever noise we want. It's entertainment. It's not factual. Well, the BBC is different. When the BBC labels something as factual, it is factual. And there's severe consequences for them broadcasting something that's not factual that they label as factual. So they made it perfectly crystal clear to us that there would be no trickery, there would be no woo-woo. We could do whatever experiments or whatever we wanted to do, but there would be no fakery. It would all be true and legit. And if nothing was captured, that's fine. They just wanted to tell the story of these buildings and these apparent hauntings at these buildings. And that suited us great because there was no pressure. Like there's nothing worse than thinking you have to record something that apparently doesn't exist, and to do it every time in every episode. So the time came for us to record the pilot episode. And of course, I did my thing at the end, set up a few microphones. It was actually these Behringer C1 condenser mics that just hung in a few locations of the room. And that went into an amplifier, well, actually a mixing board. It's a 4-channel, and coincidentally, it was called a spirit notepad, which this wasn't intentional. It just happened to be what the name of the thing was. And then from the spirit notepad, it went into a laptop, and I was running Adobe Audition, like an early version of Adobe Audition, to do the recording and the analyzing and processing and all that. So I'm sitting there just kind of half paying attention. Just, I know the camera guy just wants to see the screen and wants to see the lights, and that's all they're wanting to see. But then all of a sudden on the spectrograph, the signature human speech started coming in when our psychic, we had a psychic in the team, and she would come in and say what she was picking up and what she was detecting and what she was perceiving, and she would attempt to actually speak and make contact to the apparent entities in the room. And I'll be damned if they weren't replying to her, you know. I started seeing these replies that I couldn't hear with my ear, but I could see in the spectrograph that they were happening right after her. And you could see the signature of her human speech on the graph, and you could see the signature of human speech after that that I couldn't hear with my ears. But then on the playback, the voices were there. And of course, the camera guy's like zooming in. It's like, what? Something's happening. The director's looking, and he's like, what? The director of the show was a trained audio expert. And he starts scratching his head, and he's like, somebody playing a television, or he starts thinking of all the logical things that it could be. And, you know, they went around, the BBC would seal off the locations beforehand, so they would know nobody was in, nobody was out. We were there in the dead of night. It was what it was. It was replies to the medium's questions and the medium's comments. So that was fine. We wrapped that night. We all went home. We thought, well, that was coincidental. That was cool. We actually got something on the first episode. So the commissioning editor of the BBC got the edit and was looking at the edit, and he was watching it at home with his wife. And his wife actually saw what I was doing, and she says, I want to see more of this guy. And of course, like any man does, exactly what she says. And he comes back to the production meeting and he says, okay, yeah, we're going to do a full series of this. That's great. But we want the audio guy. We want to see more of him. We want that to be a main feature. Well, that was good and bad news. Good news, I got cast on a TV show. Bad news, I was expected to produce this on every episode, and I didn't really know how I produced it in the first episode. So it was going to be a long journey of exploration, because if you're recording music or you're recording a voiceover, you control the atmosphere. You know, you're going to do it in a soundproof room. You're going to do it in a hall with good acoustics, but you don't have control over where you're being sent. You know, you don't know what the acoustics are going to be like. You don't even know what the hell you're recording or how to do it. So because what I did the first time worked, I continued to do it that way, and it worked. You know, we were getting this anomalous audio in pretty much every place that we went. And, you know, to the point where the BBC production crew, they couldn't believe what was happening, and they wanted to make sure, double sure, that there was no trickery involved. So I wasn't allowed to use my own computers. They supplied the laptop. They took it away again to make sure there was no USB drives going in and sound clips being put on. They actually got a guy that stuck with me all the time, watching every move I made to make sure I wasn't in some way, you know. And the guy was a professional trained audio technician, and he would say, he says, I don't know how you're doing this, but I'm gonna find out. You know, and I'm like, dude, I'm not doing it. I'm just pressing record. And as far as the processing goes, they wanted a quick turnaround. So, you know, they're kind of, we would film for 3 days, and I would record audio, and then the BBC would kind of be tapping the foot like, well, come on, get us a turnaround. So there was no real time for processing. The most that I really ever did was just raise the volume up a little bit in clips. And when you raise the volume up, sometimes you raise atmosphere noise up as well. So there was the odd time I would take a sample of quiet 5 seconds before the speech came in, just so I could use that sample to take the noise out of the clip, you know. That's the most I ever did. Raise the volume up, took a bit of the noise out. And so we did 6 episodes for the first series. And to get those 6 episodes, it took a year of research to find those 6 locations. So when you see these television shows, they're on the Travel Channel and they're like season 15, episode 578, and they're getting something in every single episode, that's not happening. You know, because I know how long it took to get 6 episodes. You'd be researching for 100 years to try to find locations that produce the goods that well to get that quality of footage. And so our second series was 4 episodes, and it took another year to research those 4 locations. We were in every apparent haunted pub, dungeon, bar, house, castle to get these 4 locations. And we chose these 4 locations because typically every time we were there, something happened. And we thought, well, this would be the best chance of getting something on camera. And of course, the second episode, we had a little bit better budget. The BBC trusted us because they couldn't find any trickery, and we knew them quite well, and they knew that we weren't making things up, that we were legitimately recording things that were there in the atmosphere. So they started asking me if I would experiment a little bit and adapt, say a different thing in each episode. And the first time they asked me to do that, I was actually driving to a location in Londonderry. I was in the car, the phone rang, I answered the phone. It was a producer, and he was saying, one of the guys told me that the experiment they were going to do tonight, something fell through with it, and we need you to do something for show. Have you got anything in mind? And I was passing a music store. And I said, well, actually, I've always wanted to use a violin. I wanted to use the acoustic holes of a violin, the sound box, to try to amplify room atmosphere to see if I could get any luck that way. And they said, yeah, sounds good, do it. So stopped the car, went into the music store, and by that time we had already been airing on the BBC, and the guy behind the counter recognized me. And I said, I want to rent a violin. And he says, is this to record a ghost? And I said, yeah, I'm going to try. And he says, just take it. So he gave me a violin, walked out the door with the violin, drove to Londonderry. And I had been researching previously the frequency response of a violin and the capabilities of it. And I found that with the strings, I've got this written down as well, the violin, it can transmit from 196 hertz to 3000 hertz, but that's just with the strings resonating in the chamber. But the sound box is capable of amplifying the tones on the borderlines of infrasound and ultrasounds. Of course, infrasound being below human hearing, ultrasound being above human hearing. So I thought, if I've got a microphone that can record the whole audio spectrum of human hearing, and I've got a sound box, a natural amplifier that can amplify those frequencies at the borderline of infrasound and ultrasound, I've got a pretty good chance of recording things that I previously was missing with the equipment. And so we drove up to this. It was an old stately home, I think from the early 1700s. This place was built, and it was built of solid rock, solid stone. Pre-hen house is what you call the place. And set up the violin, and I put a lav mic, like a tie clip mic, onto one of the F holes of the violin. And that mic, the frequency response was the whole spectrum of human hearing. Set that up, put the mic on the F hole, and put a bit of subtle white noise. We had a speaker and a white noise generator. And I got that idea from Frederick Jurgensen from recording the bird song, because when I listened to his recordings, the leaves and the trees made like a white noise sound. And I was curious if, with white noise being basically a sample of every single tone all at once, if there was something in that made it capable of picking up those voices that he picked up. So I didn't have a bunch of leaves that rattled, so I had a white noise generator, and Adobe Audition at that time had settings where you could generate a sample of white noise. So I generated, say, like 5 minutes of white noise and subtly broadcasted that into one of the F holes while I had the lav mic recording through the mixing desk and the laptop on the other F hole. So we had the medium, the psychic, she'd come in and she had detected an entity in this house, and she was attempting to make contact. So she had sat down in front of a fireplace, and she was talking to this entity, and I was there with the violin and a lav mic, and it started coming in louder and clearer than ever. It was absolute success. The frequencies we were recording with the subtle white noise and this resonating chamber, the anomalous speech was hitting as loud as her actual speech. And at that point, that's where we got our first taste of like a conversation, because I was so good at it at that point that I could hit the timeline back and within a couple of seconds hear what the reply to her questions was, and I was able to feed that into the room to the people doing the contact. And I've actually got a clip of that here that I would like to play for you, and then afterwards I'll go through the process of it, and if I can remember how to do this. I can record spirits, but he can't work Zoom.
So the share screen?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, this is going to be exciting.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, it has just started.
Basically, this is a little system I've devised, and it's called the ITC Orchestra. ITC is instrumental transmutation, and it's basically the apparent ability of picking up paranormal activity on electronic equipment, and that's done by video and audio. See, the violin is a natural, that's a natural amplifier. So I'm going to hook up a microphone to the other part of the violin, which amplifies the room atmosphere plus the tones, and we'll be able to see if there's anything coming through, and we'll be able to clean that up and hopefully hear what they're saying. It almost sounds to me like you should help me.
That's definitely you should help me. So he's asked for help.
Good evening, Andrew, sir. My name is Marion.
From his base in the next room, Mark has been monitoring and recording. Despite the apparent quiet, it seems that Marion's questions did not go unanswered.
Okay, this is it's very interesting.
Really?
When you guys are out in the next room, you were saying something like, "Are you here?" And then you said, "I can feel him." And right after "I can feel him," you get,
Christ.
It's great.
I'm stuck inside and then inside.
That's fantastic. I mean, I've strived for years to try and prove what I get is real. What I feel is real. I believe in the survival of the human spirit and the ability of that spirit to communicate with me. And for the first time in my life, I've heard it.
there's one last one here I want you to have a listen to.
Needs our help, yes or no?
Just contact. I mean, that is intelligent
It's
contact.
amazing, amazing.
We've never had that, Mark. We've never had we're having a conversation.
Needs our help, yes or no?
For the first time in a long time, I'm stuck for words.
Okay, now if I can figure out how to get back. There we go. So yeah, that was the first attempt with the violin.
That was amazing. Holy.
And you heard me at the beginning of it say it's called the ITC Orchestra. Of course, I didn't have a name for this thing at the time. And they were saying, what are you calling this? And I was like, well, Instrumental Transcommunication Violin Orchestra. Let's call it the ITC Orchestra. And turns out I've been using the ITC Orchestra pretty much ever since. And it's a big feature in the book. I adapted a cello into it as well. So you've got the violin on one side, and then you've got the cello recording even more frequencies. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
I don't even have a copy of that myself.
No, I've got two.
In fact, Canada's been very good. I've noticed it's in Canadian libraries, and yeah, so thanks, Canada.
Yeah. So, how do you feel now when you are coming back and revisiting these experiences of your audio experiences with the advent of new technology and everything that we have available in our midst now today, knowing your personal experiences and the stringent criteria that were put upon you that this has to be done in the most accurate, unfaked way. Do you have any ideas of what you would like to try now with what we have available today?
Yeah, the advancement of technology I find is excellent on the recording and processing end. The actual recording devices, sometimes the better they get, the harder it is, because the likes of iPhones, everybody wants to use iPhones now to replace a dictaphone, but an iPhone has like a built-in noise canceller.
Oh.
And I find that a lot of times, if I were to take an old style dictaphone with the magnetic tape and an iPhone, I'm going to get better audio on the dictaphone every time, because the iPhone is eliminating a lot of the frequencies that I actually need. An iPhone will predict the frequency of background noise or static, and it will cut that out to get you a clearer voice. But I need those frequencies because that's where this anomalous audio typically comes from, are those frequencies. And there seems to be, there's definitely an energy involved, a magnetic energy involved, in the same way as the Northern Lights. And when you've got a magnetic tape with iron oxide or whatever it is that they put on it, I find that that's perfect. And that's why the early guys, Frederick and those guys, were making such amazing recordings, is because that primitive material was ideal for recording what we're trying to record. So I find that I use a mix of old and new, and it's trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And some things are just too good to record what we're trying to record.
Right. So if it isn't broken, don't fix it. So it's sounding like the basis for your work needs to remain analog. Could you give us an example of a place where a new digital technology could be to your advantage and not be an inhibitor or a canceller of the effects that you want to be able to get?
Yeah, the newer technology is good in locations where people are actually hearing and seeing things with their own ears and their own eyes.
Wow. Okay.
If it's trying to record things outside of our usual hearing range, I find that the older stuff is better. With microphones, it's not so much, because microphones have pretty much stayed the same for decades. But when you've got devices like your iPhones and that have built-in microphones, the better they get, the worse they are for recording this kind of stuff. So I'm happy with the new computers. I'm happy with the new software. I'm happy with the memory cards that we can now put 15 gig of footage onto a computer in 30 seconds when it would have taken us hours before to ingest it. But in terms of microphones and that, I like the old stuff. I'm doing a lot of stuff with lasers at the minute as well, where I've found that, like the old CIA laser listeners that they used to make that where they could point a laser at the window and they could
Vibrate.
I've had a lot of luck with using, say, a pane of glass and a laser and bouncing the laser off of that pane of glass onto a photocell. And I would attach the photocell to an amplifier, which goes into the mixing desk, which goes into Adobe Audition. And to vibrate, I've gotten speech from the vibrations on the pane of glass. So I'm working on that, developing that. That's actually called Gilmore's Ghost, after David Gilmour's Pink Floyd light show. I was sitting there in the dark, candlelight, watching these lasers bounce off of these things, and I was like, what can I call this thing? And then I remembered Comfortably Numb from watching Pink Floyd in Dallas, Texas, 1995, and I thought, Gilmore's Ghost.
There you go.
I'm still waiting to incorporate Geddy Lee or Neil Peart into some sort of a system, but I know those guys don't believe in any of this stuff. So,
Well, you never know. You absolutely never know. What about modern plugins, VST processing, any of those aspects in your post-analysis that you might want to consider bringing into your work? You're obviously an inventor, so you're obviously creating different ways of pulling in signals. Have you had the opportunity to try with a lot of these post-processing to assist you in getting maybe a clearer extraction, if you will?
it's definitely something to look into. But most of the stuff being television work, I try to keep the posts as brief and as little tampered with as possible, because there's a lot of eyes on you when you're doing this stuff, and the more things you're bringing in that people don't understand, the more they say that you're actually creating this stuff. So I'm kind of old school, like the old indie bands. They like to set up in the studio and just record it how it is. I'm kind of the same way with this stuff. At times I understand that it is a little bit hard to understand, but you have to understand that this is being extracted from a room that's completely sealed off and silent. So although the speech is coming through and sometimes it's a bit muddled up and sometimes it's a bit hard to hear, it's speech coming through from thin air, So that's the amazing part of it. Yeah, I could probably spend a bit more time and try to get it, but people will just say that I'm constructing this,
Right. Right. Have you pulled in any electronic voice phenomena in a language other than English? Have you ever pulled in any kinds of sounds that aren't speech and wondered what they were and done research in that direction?
The one time that the BBC was convinced was a place called Direct Wine Shipments in Belfast. And we actually recorded a voice in French, and none of us spoke French. And it was, I think Marion had asked, is there anyone here? And it's clear as day. I recorded this voice that said, Ici certain. Now, I didn't speak French. Nobody there spoke French.
That means yes, definitely.
One of the producers, her roommate was French, so she called her roommate on the phone and says, I want to play something for you, and you tell me what it says. And she played it, and then she said, certainly here.
Yeah. Yes,
so
certainly, yes.
That was the first time I recorded something that was not English. Noises all the time. I've actually had something tap on the microphone.
Oh.
That happened in Prehen House as well. I don't think I have that video clip, but that night we were there, there was something that was just tapping on the microphone, and I could see the microphone. I could see there was nobody tapping on it, but it was right there in my view. But you could just hear and all sorts of strange noises, growls.
Yeah.
Knocking's a big one.
If there had to be another kind of invention that maybe you've been dreaming about or hatching together a plan, is there anything that you can share of Any future exploratory methods for anomalous investigation that you would be willing to share with us and let us in on a little of your secret?
Acoustics is what I would like to work with. I like acoustic chambers.
Okay.
As I do, the technology is great, and all the things with the bells and the whistles and the new, a lot of it I don't understand. It advances so, like my phones, my kids work the phones better than I do. The technology just moves on so fast that if I have something that works, I don't want the better version. I want the one that works. And but acoustic chambers like concha shells.
Yes.
I like to mic things, stick a lav mic in a concha shell and somehow amplify that and see what I can pick up that way.
Have you done that? And what have you picked up?
I haven't done it. I've got the concha shell and I've got the idea in my head, but I
Yeah.
haven't yet taken it to a location. And also hydrophones, underwater recording.
Underwater.
And particularly in salt water, because salt water is a better conductor of energy. And if we are working with some type of energy here that's recording onto this thing, I would like to get some type of container, and I've got the name for this one. It's called the Hydrogeist, and develop a underwater microphone in seawater in some sort of a glass container and just see what I record with that. I like to, because it's television and it's visual, I like to bring things in from where I'm going. So if I go to a location, like in Prehend, the man that owned the place, he had a Stradivarius violin. Of course, he wouldn't let me anywhere near it, but I wanted to use that Stradivarius violin because it was from the location. And there's history and there could be energy off of it. So when I go somewhere, a lot of times I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll see something, an artifact from the location, and I'll see some way that I can mic that up or use that as an acoustic chamber. And I have another clip if you'd like to see it. The thing everybody talks about is a conversation that we had, which happened at the finale of season 2 of the show. And these weren't my words. The book says I'm the first person to record and document a real live two-way conversation between this world and the spirit world with cameras rolling. My title for the book was just Spirit Voices. My publisher said, "Oh no, we're going to put the first live conversation." He says, because I know about these things. He was an editor for Reader's Digest and all, and he says, "I can tell you this has never happened before. You're the guy." He says there may have been people who have recorded conversations, but nobody's ever done it with BBC factual cameras running. I said, "All right, fair enough." And this conversation led to a book deal, and me writing a book is more paranormal than a ghost walking through that wall, you know. But however, I did it. I wrote the book, and the book just kind of documents what I'm telling you now, how I got into it from start to finish, leads up to the conversation, how we recorded it. And the way that we did was we were in this hotel in a town called Carrickfergus. Carrickfergus is a seaside town, big castle there, and this old hotel that's hundreds of years old. And people kept talking about these experiences they were having in one of the rooms in the hotel. So the BBC heard about this and said, "We're going to use that. Go down there, spend 3 days in the hotel, see what you can get." And to be honest, the place was dead. Pardon the pun. We were there, nothing was happening, and it was the finale, the last episode, and we were like, "What a way to end this thing!" I wasn't recording anything. The guys weren't recording anything. It was just nothing was happening. So we'd filmed the footage. We were going to put it out the way that it was, and we had about 3 hours left over. And that wasn't my idea. As far as I was concerned, I was going home. I was done. But one of the guys says, "Well, why don't we just use this time and attempt this live recording thing?" And of course, they look at me to figure out how to do it. And so I was thinking, right, so we're defining this as a live conversation. So what can I do with what I've got available? And I think one of the production guys was able to get me a second laptop. So my plan was we were going to have Marion, the medium, go into the room where the things kept happening, because there's something about her that I noticed after doing 2 seasons of this, that when she was around, I recorded more stuff. When she was around, things happened. So there was something about her. Now, I don't know what that is. I'm not an expert, but she's got some type of energy that amplifies what I do. And so we decided to have her in the room, the haunted room. They put me in the room next door. We had CCTV in each room where I could see and hear what she was saying. She couldn't see or hear me, but I had a comm link to a person in the room. So the plan was, if I recorded any responses to her questions, I would feed that back into the room to the guy in the room, and he would say it out loud. And we would try to keep this going and create a live conversation. So my technical setup was back to the Behringer C1 condenser mics. A lot of people think I use this violin or some groundbreaking technology with the conversation, but it was just 2 microphones, 2 laptops. That's all I used. And so the microphones were wired into my little 4-channel Spirit notepad and into, this time, 2 separate laptops, because the plan was, in case I couldn't hear any responses she was getting, I would cut back and listen while this laptop to the right of me was still recording, so we wouldn't lose anything. So I was like a star DJ, switching back and forth to these laptops. And so Marion sat on the bed of this room and she tuned in, and after a few minutes she said, "Oh, I can feel somebody here." And she started talking, and sure enough, the replies started coming in, and I couldn't hear them as they were coming in, but I was so quick at it by that point. I cut back a few seconds, heard what was said, or my best interpretation of what was said, and then I would feed that in to the guy that was in the room, and he would speak it out loud. And we were hoping at most once or twice this would happen, but it actually went on for 45 minutes. We had like 45 minutes worth of conversation coming in and out, and we didn't think it was ever going to end. And the BBC recorded the whole thing, and I've got some highlight clips of that now that I'll play for you. And let's see if I can still remember how to do this. Share screen. There we go. Right, here we go.
Next door in room 22, Mark is monitoring Andy and Marion's conversation. If he can pick up and interpret any unexplained voice phenomena, he'll feed the words straight back to Darren in room 21. An extraordinary first for paranormal investigation.
This is like a moon landing, because if this comes off, it's going to be something that's never been done, that's never been attempted before, as far as to my knowledge, and it's certainly never been achieved.
Were you shot, sir? Did you shoot somebody?
Right, I got something that sounds like, "Please stop."
Right after where he asked where he got shot. "Please stop."
I can feel it. You don't need to be here. You don't need to be here, sir.
Right, when she says you don't have to be here, it's something like, they won't let me, or they don't love me, or something like that.
All you need to do is grasp that hand.
Will you carry me?
You don't need to be carried. All you need to do is reach out. Hold on tight. Hold on really tight. Now go with him.
There was something come through there.
Is there anybody else here?
Jesus, that's a woman, right?
Is your name Maud?
Mark has now analysed and clarified all the audio evidence, creating a complete record of Marion and Andy's apparent two-way conversation with the spirit of Room 21. The results, even compared to the live feedback, are extraordinary.
I'm addressing the male presence in this room. Do you want to talk to us? You want to talk to Marion?
Will you leave?
Play it again. I didn't quite get it.
You want to talk to Marion?
Leave me.
Leave me. And this is exactly the conversation as it happened.
You want to talk to us? You want to talk to Marion?
Leave me.
Not only are the voices there, but the voices and what we think they're saying are relevant to the conversation.
So we had a chance to help you. You know the same. It's just, you understand what I'm trying to do. Do you not want to know?
Do you understand? It's just...
To help you. You know the same. It's just, you understand what I'm trying to do. Do you not want to know?
I'm really baffled. I'm not baffled. I'm excited, but it's like finding the Holy Grail. I mean, short of having an apparition walk through a wall and shake your hand, this is as close as you're going to get.
Are you in pain?
With you.
Yeah.
It's with you. Will you carry me with you?
Are you in pain?
Can you carry me?
This is my whole life's work. This is somebody hearing what I hear, and it's just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal.
I have a little something here. There's a voice, and then there's you. You say, "Don't turn back for God's sake."
On the way out to the light, yeah.
There's another voice. It's okay.
Oh, run it back.
It's okay.
Who said that? It's a girl.
That sounds like a female to me. And then pretty soon after that, you pick up. Are you all right?
It's okay.
If this is what it appears to be, this has got to be the first time ever that live communication between a medium and something possibly paranormal has ever happened.
There you have it.
My God, Mark. It's fascinating stuff. Just really, really fascinating stuff. Have you had any recent experiences of anything like this that you can share?
And all the time. I think when you're exposed to that environment so much, and it becomes just part of everyday normal life. Like, I'm not somebody that, I don't go out and pray to the horned God on Thursday nights or anything. I'm a pretty relatively normal person, but I've just seen so much and been exposed to so much that the paranormal is quite normal to me.
One last question. You have a regular day job. Like, I know you have a regular day job, and you're responsible for finding water leaks. Is that correct? And a lot of those water leaks are taking place underground. And so I know that I think you had shared with me before that there's a use of audio equipment that you've been given to do to make that work easier on you. Can you describe what type of audio work you do to find water leaks underground? And have you picked up anything unusual listening for water?
Yeah, pretty much my whole existence is audio in some shape or form.
Yep.
So I do contract work for a environmental company. Now, half of Ireland's drinking water is lost through subterranean water bursts. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to make water that would normally kill you drinkable for humans. Like, we live on a water planet, 90% of it will kill you. And then once that water is treated and put into tanks, you don't want to lose half of it into the ground with water bursts. So we have satellites and we have subterranean audio recorders that we use that find and detect these bursts. And it's basically a flight case of all these little sensors that I will go to an area of a suspected burst, and I'll just deploy these sensors all underground throughout this area. And these things wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they say hello to each other, and they take a 2-hour audio clip and listen for the frequencies of spraying water underground. And if they detect these frequencies, they will correlate between each other and give you a pretty accurate within 1 or 2 meters of where this suspected water burst is. And I'll drive up and download the report. It'll show me a map. It'll highlight in big red dots where it thinks this water burst is, and I'll just send that report on to the proper people who come and dig it up and fix it. And so we've got, they put it to the test last year. There's a team of people that just go out on the ground with these listening sticks and do it the old-fashioned way. We have an Israeli satellite that detects chlorinated water, and they have what I do, and they put me up against the satellite and the team, and I think it was something like my equipment produced 30 or 40% more results than the combination of the team on the ground and the satellites. So audio is the answer. Audio will save the planet.
Wow. Would the sound of flowing water provide that kind of white noise baseline for some kind of signal of something you can't explain, or something that qualifies like what you're experiencing that could be paranormal, like what you did with Ireland's Greatest Haunts? Could anything like that show up from underground?
It's possible that now these things are tuned to just basically detect the frequencies of spraying water and to ignore everything else.
So that it doesn't have
But
the frequency range of like what you were saying for violin or...
it's not supposed to, but if it detects a water burst and starts recording, it's possible to record something else along with it. And we did that. There was some people may have seen it on the news or know about the various hums that are being heard around the planet. Taos, New Mexico, a few other places where these people are hearing this droning sound, and it's driving some people crazy. And it's like a diesel engine droning sound, and they can't find where that's coming from. It's close to military bases. It's close to these places where people say they see UFOs and things like that. But there's a town in Northern Ireland that developed one of these hums. And it was also a town where they suspected some water bursts. So I thought, what if I deploy these noise loggers into the ground, look for this water burst, but also see if I can pick up and record this hum.
You are an anomalous investigator.
And we did record samples of the hum that nobody else had managed to record it, but these subterranean noise loggers recorded it. And the strange thing is, the loggers work the same way the people were experiencing it. You'd have somebody in a house who was being completely driven insane by this noise, but then their next door neighbor couldn't hear it at all. So if it was something machinery or audible like that, that would make no sense. Everybody would hear it equally. But then the noise loggers work the same way. One logger would pick up this frequency, this tone, but then the one next to it wouldn't. So there seems to be a third ingredient at play that determines whether or not a person hears this and whether or not a device records it. What that is, I have no idea, but yeah, it's so far the only anomalous thing I've picked up.
Okay. Mark, thank you so much for taking all of this fabulous time. I know it's very late at your side to do this pre-recording in the event that we won't be able to have you deliver your presentation live. And I will, in the event that we're going to use this recorded playback for Tuesday night, I'm going to open the floor to our audience, because I'm sure they have a million questions for you. So we're going to move on to the next stage, which will be a question and answer. And all of our viewers will have an opportunity to have their questions answered by you. We're going to try and limit it to a time period that is considered suitable. And Mark, thank you very much. We're going to close off this recording for right now, and let's move on to the next stage. Thanks again.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We're welcome, and we thank you.
Well, thanks for that recording. I just wanted to once again say thank you, Mark and Angeli, for doing that. We are the Toronto Audio Engineering Society. Thanks for sticking around. Like it says in the chat room, we do have, for those who are on the AES mailing list, just, join the Zoom, mute your microphones for now, and we'll come back to some questions. Mark is on the line. Angeli's on the line. Again, we're the Toronto Audio Engineering Society. Please go to torontoaes.org. Again, we unite audio engineers socially. So having an opportunity to do presentations like this and group gatherings is really what we're all about. And we know that the music industry isn't the audio industry, as I like to say. So for those who are interested in stuff, Mark, Angeli, thank you for this. This is exactly the type of diversity that we're looking for in presentations, and I could say that this is very much one of my favorite presentations, because it is unlike what we normally deal with, and your mentorship and your presentation really is exciting to see. We have, and Angeli will talk about it, maybe we have a giveaway of your book. We're going to purchase the book, so whoever gets paid gets paid. We respect purchasing the art. I'll show that up in a second here when I get you on screen, Angeli. So if you do want to give the pages a browse and read Mark's craft, please email torontoaes@torontoaes.org for that. I did update the slide page while we were going here. So thanks again to our sponsors who make evenings like this possible. Adamson, avshop.ca, BRTB. I do think BRTB changed their name of their company. I can't remember what it is. I apologize. I gotta really get on this. Gear Audio, Sonotechnique, Lawo, Solotech, Canadian-made Q5X. Our sponsors, supporters, as always, are the Toronto Metropolitan University, University of Toronto Faculty of Music, and Sheridan Sheridan Industries Research and Training Center. So thanks again. Angeli, I kind of hand it over to you. We got some questions. We got some people on the line. For those who are on the line, please wait until you're called to give some audio. And Angeli, please take it away.
Hello, welcome everyone. I hope you enjoyed this evening's presentation. Mark, it's great to have you here all the way from Northern Ireland. It's as though time and space are no longer a thing. How are you?
Good.
Good. So what we're going to do now is anybody who would like to be on video is welcome to be on video. We'll just ask you to keep your mics muted. At the bottom of your Zoom tray, if you need to raise your hand to ask a question, by all means, please do so. And I'll be happy to moderate the question and answer period. Mark, already during the YouTube broadcast, we received one question, and a viewer asks, have you ever recorded the same signal on two different systems at the same time?
I don't know if we've ever tried. Typically, I just have what I was using myself. There'd be people floating around with audio recorders and that, but I don't recall anybody ever coming up to me with a sample of the same thing that we've recorded. We have recorded like something on a camcorder and on an audio device at the same time, but I don't think we've ever even used two different audio systems at the same time. The BBC camera people came to me a couple of times and said that they had noticed they had anomalous voices on their equipment, some of the places that we were filming together in, and some places that they had filmed in previously, because once they saw that I was sort of bringing these things up and highlighting them, they started going back and listening to their own footage. They're like, I wonder, I was at this place or I was at that place. I wonder if I'd ever caught anything. And sure enough, a lot of them did. And it just completely went over their heads at the time. And but yeah, I got a lot of reports of people like audio engineers from the BBC going back, listening to their footage and coming up with their own anomalous audio and voices.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And it's very hopeful for the rest of us because one of the things that I was advertising out is, chime in on tonight's presentation. You'll learn how to capture EVP phenomena possibly in your own home.
There's been a lot of like Rupert Grint from Harry Potter contacted me, and him and his brothers, they watched that movie White Noise, and I guess it's about this kind of stuff. I don't like scary movies, but uh, I was working with him on a project, and he come over to me and he was like, we've done this too. Me and my brothers were recording in the house, and we recorded a voice saying help me, and I was like, yeah, you welcome to the club, you know.
So how does it make you feel when all of these other famous people like Thomas Edison and all of these other individuals, and now, people who have starred in Harry Potter. We know that there's many, many people. Are there any other celebrities that you have worked with or reached out to, or have reached out to you to help tell their story?
There's been a lot of celebrities get in touch with their own experiences and stuff like that. Not too many that attempt to record audio or anything like that. I've been ghost hunting with a few people that are on the big screen. Some you can say, some you can't say, but that's something everybody's interested in. It's like a stag party or a hen party. Everybody wants to do it, once. And where I'm sitting, once you're on your like 500-600th night filming stuff, you're done with it. You want to turn it off. But
I'd like to open the floor for anybody who'd like to ask a question to Mark. Please go ahead and raise your hand, unmute, and even turn on your video because Mark would love to see who you are. He would love to hear you.
especially if anybody's going to criticize me, I want to see your face.
No, I'll. Can you hear me? It's Anthony here. I'll start off the questions. No. There's no criticism. I think it's very interesting, and I think what you do for a career is also very interesting. So I'm wondering about your water recordings and your vibrations in the ground type of thing. Have you ever? I know there was a whole kind of thing about like recording concert hall noise and double speeding it so it raises an octave so you can identify the noise coming in and out. Do you ever do any kind of processing where you do change the tone or change the speed of things to identify things just so they're out of the lower frequencies and up into the higher frequency stuff?
Yep, we've played around with that. I've done some pitch bending, things like that, just to, especially when you're getting into like the borders of infrasound and things like that. Sometimes speeding something up just a little bit or pitch shifting up just a little bit kind of makes it a bit more audible and understandable. And I've done some stuff with crop circles recently. I'm just sort of at the beginning stages of this, but I've noticed some interesting things. That I've taken some aerial shots of crop circles and use this little app that converts photo to audio and played it. And there's things coming through on that. You get the sort of sweep that you get from the audio version of an overhead shot of a crop circle, but there's other things coming in depending on which way you tilt it and which way you play it from top to bottom or left to right or whatever. But there's definitely some things coming through that we're using sort of pitch shifting and trying to find the right speeds to play that at to see if we can make something that's understandable out of it, But yeah, it's something we play around with.
what does a crop circle sound like if you do sweep, like you were just describing?
Right. The best thing is just to do it and have a listen. Google Chrome has an extension that you can get, and it basically turns like photos to audio.
Mhm.
And you can get this extension and then just go on Google and just look up crop circles, like an image search. So when you find a good aerial shot of one, put it through that app and then run it through Adobe Audition's what I would usually prefer to use, but whatever audio program you have, just run it through that and listen, and it has a real cool sound to it. But we use that to identify ourselves in certain locations because you don't know the capabilities of whatever the intelligence is that's in the, you don't know if they can see you or if they can just hear you like we can just hear them. So we took samples of our own face and converted it to audio and transmitted that into the room, audio version of each one of us, just in case, I don't know, that stirred things up or helped matters.
Fascinating. We have Alex Gamble here with us this evening. Alex, go ahead and turn on your video if you wish. And you guys can say hi and go ahead and fire away.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask a question. You went into some detail during the YouTube presentation earlier about a technique you used where you activated a violin body with white noise, or activated a room with white noise, and then recorded through a violin body. Could you elaborate a bit more on what that involved? Like, was that white noise persistent during the recording process? Like, was it shot into the violin body, or was it in the room? And did you also need to do some noise removal on that white noise present in the recording to then extract the voice, or were you simply able to hear it over the white noise?
Yeah, the white noise was just through a little box speaker, and it was so subtle that it was just barely resonating in the sound box of the violin. So there was no need to take it out later. It wasn't loud enough to get in the way.
Gotcha.
But it was going in one of the F holes, resonating around, and then the lav mic was on the other FO, catching it on the comeback.
Mm-hmm. And did that white noise technique stay with you to some degree throughout your recording?
Recording in progress.
Or was that something you just did that one time?
Well, that was the first time we did it, but it worked so well that time that I've continued on. And it makes sense because the recording equipment has gotten so good in modern day that a lot of the older stuff, that noise would have already been there. That would have been tape noise, and the old dictaphones are some of the devices I've heard the best, most understandable speech. So I'm trying to kind of replicate some of that old technology a bit, not make it overpowering. And I'm not even so sure that it's required, but I find that the speech is a lot more understandable if it's subtly there.
Okay.
You look familiar. Where have I seen you before?
I'm not sure. Uh-oh. Paranormal?
No.
Was that there in the spirit form somewhere?
Could be.
Anyways, thanks for the presentation. It was really, really informative.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. That was a great question. Has anybody else who's here on the Q&A with us had any kind of experience that they'd like to ask Mark about in terms of anything audio related or not? Any questions that you have? You can go ahead, raise your hand, let us know.
I'll do the same thing just because it's me again, Anthony. Sorry, I'm just one of those guys. So I've had certain experiences where at my old studio people would bring me videotape recordings and they would ask me to transfer it to digital because they expected they experienced some phenomenon. I've transferred some people who've passed away. I've transferred voicemail messages from people's inboxes to recording so they could preserve somebody's voice and their messages from loved ones for others. I've transferred, people hiding recording devices under their loved one's seat to make sure to see if they're cheating on them, and what kind of conspicuous, what kind of weird, like other than like. Again, it's a weird gig. Could you maybe talk about some of the ideas that maybe didn't work, or the things that just seemed so normal that did work, or some of the things that you were expecting to work or didn't work? There's value in failure. Could you maybe talk about some of the jobs that you've done? Because you said you talked about transfers and blah. Maybe talk about some of your failures that you thought would work but just weren't fruitful.
Yeah, well, that for one, that last episode that we ever recorded that we ended up getting the conversation was a complete failure up until that point. So we were 3 days in the place. It was supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the country. And we even had one of the guys was just begging for anybody that just talked to us to say something. And we'd wrap the episode. And we still had, the BBC would pay like a location fee to some of these places, and we still had like 3 hours to go. So we were just practicing on our own one of the guys had the idea, like I said, to do this live conversation. So I had already given up at that point. I thought that time was a complete failure. I've been lucky where most of the ideas I've had have sort of worked. It's locations. Locations seem to be a big part of this, more so than what recording system you're using. And I found that the problem is, especially when you put out a book on this stuff, I've gotten so many complaints from people who think you can just go out and do one of these and it's going to work. Some things I've never had the same thing work twice. People get annoyed saying, "I bought this book and you don't tell us how to record a ghost." And I'm like, "There's no surefire way to do it. It's different every location. It's more about." I like it because you can just get a harebrained idea in your head and try it out. And the harebrained ideas are the ones that seem to work the best. Like the laser beam thing. Like, who would have thought that you would have recorded something with a laser beam bouncing off a pane of glass? Fair enough, maybe your neighbor, but not something that's not there, and trying that and then hearing the voices on that the first try was inspiring. But the new, you would think, like, everybody wants to use an iPhone now, and the iPhone has the dictaphone and the audio recorder and everything on it. They're absolutely terrible for trying to record anything paranormal, because they sort of don't allow it to happen for some reason. They've got these noise cancelers and background noise removers and all these things, and the better the technology gets, the harder it is to actually record with these things. So there's been a lot of bloopers, more so than like failures with audio and that, because 9 times out of 10 whatever you're trying doesn't work. So I don't really have lots of things in my head about failures, because to be honest with you, most of it's failure until it's not failure. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, very much so. Do you? I know we've got a couple minutes left for a couple more questions. So if anybody wants, if they're too afraid to ask you, please put it in the chat. Do you have real time analysis tools like RF spectrum analysis in terms of like higher frequencies? Like, I know a lot of people. Obviously, you're going to say, well, it might be interference. It might be, I had a whole Neve console one time pick up a Chinese radio station until I put a filter capacitor between the power supply and the ground. So, do you do anything outside of the spectrum of audio while you're doing this stuff? And maybe talk a little bit about some of the some of the intricacies of why it's not RF interference, or why you have been convinced, and you can convince others through being scrutinized, that it's not just electrical nonsense and trickery that's happening.
Well, yeah, we do get a lot of interference, and especially anybody that works with audio or anybody that works with music. It's sort of the nature of the beast. You'll get some interference in, and we've picked up weird radio stations. I've picked up the odd television. The difference is when it's in direct reply to somebody that's speaking out loud in the room, and it's a couple of words that are completely relevant to the question that was just asked. So if on those occasions we're picking up interference, then how are they picking us up? How are we broadcasting? Because I can ask a question and then flip the dial of a radio onto a random station, and whatever comes through is not going to be relevant to what I've just said. I'll say, is there anybody here in spirit that wants to talk to me? Flip the radio and I'll get a weather report, or I'll get some sort of a sporting broadcast. But the chances of picking up a piece of interference right at that spot, right after a question was asked, and that speech being completely relevant to answering the question or the comment that's just been made, is a bit out there, but we've got interference plenty of times, but you can usually tell plain as day that it's interference because it sounds like a radio station, or it sounds like a police radio or something like that. In terms of scientific equipment or audio analysis things we have to pick up the frequencies, we don't really have anything mind-blowing that we would use to weed that out. We just would typically use a collective of all of our opinions, the know-how of audio engineers that are there, and a bit of common sense to say, right, that person that text just came in as if it was somebody speaking from the 1700s. So I don't know of a radio station that we could have picked that up from.
That's fascinating. Mark, I've got something close to your heart. It's almost as though Ross Whitney knew.
Tim Hortons vouchers.
Well, yes, there's going to be those coming your way. Ross is on with us this evening, and he has submitted a question into our chat box. And get this, he's asking about Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, yeah.
He says, Jimi Hendrix passed away in London, and he, like you, was from Seattle. Has anyone ever suggested you trying to contact his spirit? I saw a BBC program that included the footage of the room where he died. So, what can you tell us, Mark?
Does his brother count? His brother Leon has spoken to me plenty of times. I know. Let me think, because sometimes I forget and think we're having a private con. Where's this going? Is this being out on YouTube, or is this just between us?
This is okay. Anthony, what do we do? What do we do for?
I think, if you want to tell a story in generality, this is going live to YouTube. Yeah, we're live to YouTube. Or we could wrap the night up here, and then we could have a private conversation if you have a really cool story. But and maybe only a special treat for those who are online with us. So what should we do, Angela?
So Mark, give us.
Well, do you want to save that one till the end, and then?
Sure. We can come back to it at the end.
I don't mind. It's just it's a private conversation. I don't know what I can say and what I can't say.
Right. So what we'll do is we'll come back to Ross's question. Before we wrap up and make our way towards the end, is there anyone else who would love to venture a question out to Mark?
I know Britta wants to talk. What does Britta want to say?
Yeah, Britta actually, she told me that she was signing up. She was signing up for this, even though. Britta, do you have a question? Okay, she's gone into hiding.
I'm great at putting people to sleep too.
Oh, we've got Alex come back. Alex, go ahead.
Hey, I want to go back to something you were saying earlier about you were doing pretty limited uh, like post manipulation to these recordings after the fact, aside from simply like turning the volume up here and there. Um, how much are you having to turn the volume up? Like, were the recordings of the spirits at quite a very, very low amplitude, or were they somewhat comparable to the noise in the room? Like, what's the volume difference? Like, are we turning it up 10 dB, 20, 50, 100? Like, what's the scale?
Yeah, some of the earlier ones, quite a bit.
Yeah.
With the violin, we had to turn it down.
Wow.
It was actually coming in louder. No, I couldn't hear it except for on the playback, but I could see it on the graph. And like Marion, she was right there beside a microphone, and the anomalous speech was actually coming in louder than what she was speaking.
So you were monitoring the recording, but you weren't able to actually hear the voices until you actually stopped the recording and went and played it back afterwards.
That's right. Yeah.
And were you monitoring like
And
an
that's and
analog
somebody was
desk?
asking about interference. That's the difference in interference is you can hear the interference.
Right, that's true.
With the anomalous voices, you can see them, you can see the speech, but you can't hear it until the playback.
And in those situations, what were you monitoring live during the recording? Like, were you monitoring the preamp in the analog domain, or were you monitoring like the digital input to your DAW? What was being monitored?
I was just monitoring the laptop with headphones.
So you
And
would have been monitoring the signal that was going into your DAW and then returning into your headphones from there.
mhm,
And
yeah,
still, when you could see the waveform coming in, you couldn't hear it in real time
that's right.
until you press stop.
And after we've done a few episodes, I started getting good at it where I could actually, go back a few seconds and listen and
Right.
pretty much get it as if it were like a delay of 2 or 3 seconds. But yeah, with the violin, there was no raising of, I could just hit the timeline back a couple of seconds and hear crystal clear what was being said.
Wow. One other thing, just to elaborate on that, about the frequency spectrum. You mentioned like a suspicion that some of this activity is happening outside of the spectrum of human hearing, that it's being captured, with tools that are capturing the spectrum of human hearing. Um, what what's is the frequency spectrum of the recorded voices? Like, is it band limited to a certain area? Like when you look at sort of what frequencies are being represented on a graph, like is it sort of in a certain area, like mid-range, treble, or is it like represented all across what's being picked up on the mic?
There's some of it is in the lower, and some of it's in the higher.
Right.
I found that stuff we recorded that doesn't seem to have any intelligence behind it, that seems to be some type of a trapped recording in an atmosphere, seems to be on the higher frequencies, and the stuff that's answering your questions seems to be on the lower frequencies. But like, we're not, obviously if you record something in infrasound, you can't hear it no matter what you do. And if you record something in ultrasound, so my theory was that the stuff we're picking up is still in the human hearing range, just in the areas of the human hearing range where most of our ears still can't hear. So you can amplify those and hear them. Where if I record something in infrasound, it doesn't matter how much I amplify it, you're not going to hear it. And if you do hear it, it's not going to be understandable.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
Mark, we have a comment from Bill, who says, "Thanks for a great presentation, Mark. I found it quite interesting and very informative." Um, I did have a question in relation to what you were just speaking about with Alex, in regards to when we're picking up the sound of the voice and we're registering it as fundamentals. Could it be that they're all harmonics and there is no fundamental? I mean, this is sort of a strange question, but the fact that we're not hearing it in real time, but something's showing up on the screen
Mm-hmm.
as being pulled in. Is there a way that you can tell looking at the waveform that is it harmonics without a fundamental? Is that even a possibility?
The waveform looks exactly like our speech.
Okay.
But the thing is if you think about it, like this is a musical instrument. We hear each other talk because of, you know, the voice box
Yeah.
and the mechanics. Well, when you're recording something anomalous, that isn't there. There's not a physical person there, so you're not going to hear it. It's some type of an energy that's being picked up on the equipment.
It has a kind of a tinny quality, like a tinny, windy kind of quality.
Hmm.
Is that consistent in all of the EVPs that have been recorded?
Usually, yeah, usually it
Yeah,
does. You
fascinating.
know, the like I said earlier, the closest thing I can think of is the northern lights. Like most of the time you can't see them with your own eyes, but you snap a picture and it's there. It's the same with the audio. I wish I was smarter in science. I wish, but and possibly it's probably better that I'm not, because I think people can become so intelligent that their intelligence almost becomes a disability because they just refuse to believe. Like my son's very computer minded, where his computer doesn't work. I say, unplug it and plug it back in. And it annoys the hell out of him. He's like, that just can't possibly work. And it works every time, and that works because I'm not that smart. I believe that it's going to work and it works. Whereas if I was really technical and computer minded like him, I probably wouldn't even try something like that.
Okay, so Britta has submitted her question, and she just told us you just kind of answered my question. So she's asking another question. Are you ever listening to one EVP and then have another voice interfere or overlap, like two EVPs talking over each other, maybe? And she has a second part to that question. What do the northern lights sound like if you can, if it had a sound, which it does?
Now you've got the little rats running on the wheel in my head. I'm gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to see if I can make recordings of that.
Yeah.
We have captured two entities conversing with each other, rather than like one over the top of another. When we were recording in the hotel with the conversation, there was actually two or three, just almost like we were just out of the equation. They were communicating amongst themselves,
Right.
one
So you're
one yeah,
eavesdropping.
yeah, one reassuring another one that it's okay, and this that, and the other. So
That's
there's an EVP there. I just heard myself
yeah.
talking.
It sounded like an echo or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, how are we doing, Anthony? How are we doing for time?
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying that we're just scratching the surface as we always do. So, Mark, maybe two more questions, and then we'll go back to your Jimi Hendrix story offline for a special as a special treat for those who are here, as a private conversation.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's cool. And in regards to just to say on the record, haunted recording studios is a thing. There's a lot of reports from a lot of different recording studios that a lot of famous people had recorded in, that there have been things occurring and audio recorded in these studios. Anywhere Jim Morrison is got some type of a ghost story attached to it. Like there's a Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles that used to be the studio the Doors recorded in, and the area where the urinal is and the men's toilet was the vocal booth that Jim Morrison sang in. And a lot of people who had no knowledge of the history of the place, they keep reporting all this weird stuff that they're feeling and hearing when they're at the urinal. So
No shortage of interesting stories.
we're actually working on a project called Rocking from the Crypt, where we're trying to tell the ghost stories of rock stars.
Right. Okay, so before we close off, oh, I've got one new message. Ross's comment, and we're going to come back to his question if you've ever actually personally contacted Jimi Hendrix. So we'll let you answer that. We'll let you answer that while we're still recording. Ross's comment is weird scenes inside the pissoir.
Yeah.
So, to come back to Ross's question for the public audience, his question again: Jimi Hendrix passed away in London, UK, and he, like you, was from Seattle. Has anyone ever suggested that you try contacting his spirit? I saw a BBC program that included footage of the room where he died. So, answer accordingly, and then we'll close off.
Yep, that's been suggested. There's a project in the works that is dealing with that topic, and we were working on it a few years ago, but then there was one of the subjects of the documentary series. It was a bit too soon to work on that one, so we've kind of shelved it for a while. But Hendrix is definitely one that's up there. I'm told by people very close to Hendrix that he was a very paranormal person, that he was kind of a magnet for paranormal, and that he had a lot of experiences himself. He was completely interested in this sort of thing. So I think he would be an easy person to try and contact. And plus there's a lot of conspiracy around the way that he died and how he died. And there's been people have given deathbed confessions that they were somehow involved with, doing away with Hendrix because of this reason or that reason. And anytime you've got, there's a bowl of ingredients that lead to good paranormal accounts. And one is an artistic person, a conspiracy with the death, and those sorts of things. When you've got all those ingredients, you can usually, it's a good subject to tackle. So Hendrix is on the list. Jim Morrison is on the list. Who else? Janis Joplin is on the list. A couple of more. Brian Jones. And yeah, maybe Mr. Cobain, maybe not.
Yes, exactly. Kurt Cobain. Ross Whitney was asking, what about Cobain? And Ross is also reminding both of us, you and I, Mark, that Eddie Kramer is here in Prince Edward County as well. So next time you're back here at the mothership, I think we might see if we can set up something. We've had a new entry into our Q&A. So I would just like to invite our new guest. We're just getting ready to close off the Q&A, so if you have a last-minute ditch question to ask Mark, now would be the time. Graham, welcome.
Oh, welcome.
Yep. And if you wish, if you would like to turn on your video, Mark would love to be able to say hi to you.
Got a great last name.
Just one sec.
Okay.
There we are.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just switched over from the YouTube session.
Okay. So you want to stay on for the good stuff that's coming?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Did you have a question otherwise?
No, I think there were a lot of great questions. It's the recording technique's very interesting.
Okay.
I might try and replicate some. We'll see.
Yeah, because this is the kind of stuff that, yes, do try this at home. All right. Anthony, shall we go ahead and thank all of our guests?
Thanks for everyone for showing up. Thank you, Angeli, for hosting this. Thank you, Mark, for investing your time. What time is it in Ireland right now? Like it is, we got
It's just coming up to 1 a.m.
Very good. So you're just about to go to bed. I imagine you work all night and et cetera, doing this kind of gig. So thank you for your time. Like I said, we as a group are going to purchase one of your books and make sure it goes to a lucky person. So if you are interested, unfortunately we can't get you to autograph it and send it back. It would just cost too much in postage. It's just one of those things. So thank you again for being here, and your conversation will be preserved as part of our objective here, and I look forward to seeing where the YouTube comments go in the future. So I appreciate your time and effort in this, definitely.
Thanks for having me. I've never done anything with the audio engineering group, so this has been novel for me.
Likewise, so I appreciate it. So I'll close the audio there, and I'll give some final closing remarks. And everybody, stay online on the Zoom side of things. I do enjoy this hybrid type of thing, so thank you very much. I'll shut it down here, and thanks again. We are the Audio Engineering Society of Toronto. Please join us torontoaes.org and join us in our regular meetings. We try to meet 10 meetings a year as we go and share our information. Visit our website, torontoaes.org, and